Should I be a tank? Can I be a tank even though I'm not a leader? I want to try tanking, but I'm really nervous. I tried tanking and it was a nightmare. The rep paladin kept pulling everything and telling me to go faster. These are some of the most common questions and comments you'll see when browsing through the WoW Reddit and the forums. Tanks are the most sought after position in any group, and with the almost instant queue times, it's easy to see why players want to try tanking. I'm here to introduce you to tanking, and if you're someone who can relate to those questions or comments, this video is for you. So let's go ahead and get started. What is tanking? Tanking is protecting your group from the bad guys, whether that be regular mobs or the big bad boss. Most enemies and pretty much all bosses in any type of dungeon or raid will very quickly kill any party member that is not a tank. You are the one who is geared and spec'd to survive those big blows. And honestly, tanking is just the most badass role. Nothing screams, I'm a badass, more than being the first person to charge onto the battlefield and go toe-to-toe with the boss. Should I be a tank? If you're only doing it for faster queue times, then that answer is no. Tanking is not for you. The tank should want to be the tank. And a bad tank is much more noticeable than a bad DPS. I would even argue that it's more noticeable than a bad healer. Good tanks are highly respected and extremely sought after. So if you're only doing it for that faster queue time, it's gonna be noticeable and you're probably gonna face a lot more toxicity. Can I be a tank even though I'm not a leader? Well, absolutely. The leader of a group can actually be in any of the roles, a tank, a DPS, or even a healer. And honestly, like some of my own personal raiding experience, some of the best leaders I've had were actually ranged DPS. And thinking about it, they have the best view of everything that's going on in the raid. Now, if you seriously take up tanking as your main role, this can naturally shape you into a leader over time. As your confidence in gameplay improves, there's a good chance that if you're put into a situation, you could find yourself taking control and stepping up to the plate to be the leader. So what you're telling me is that the tank is not the de facto leader of a group? Correct, that is exactly what I'm telling you. Well, technically the tank is the first person to initiate every single pull. That does not necessarily make you the leader. The leader of a group should be the person who is the most knowledgeable or most experienced with that dungeon or raid. For instance, if you're the tank and you have no knowledge of a dungeon that you're clearing, yet the healer has cleared it multiple times, then technically the healer should be the leader of that group. However, just keep in mind that if you're pugging, then mostly everybody is going to automatically assume you as the leader if you're in the tank role. That's just kind of how it goes. Now, this is where people tend to start stuttering and struggling, because if you're getting into the whole tanking role, there's a very high chance that you're pretty much doing random dungeons and just pugging groups in order to learn the basics. And if you're new to tanking, then you need to make that known. Most party members are actually going to be really respectful if you make that known at the start of a run. If you're just starting out tanking and you don't say anything, you just decide to wing it, it's going to be noticeable. Especially if you start making a lot of mistakes that result in wipes. And if wipes start happening, that's typically when the toxicity starts to happen, especially if there is no communication. So just don't let it get to this point. So I'm sure that you're asking, well, how do I do that? And honestly, it's just like I said, politely let them know, tell them. It's an MMO, you're supposed to communicate. Be like, hey guys, I'm familiar with tanking, or, I'm just starting out tanking, but I don't really have any experience with this dungeon. If anyone knows the best route through here, please ping the way. And I'm sorry, I might pull a little slow, but I'm just ensuring a smooth run. So please be patient, and I'll start to speed up once I'm more comfortable. And it's literally that simple. If you want, just copy and paste that into every group that you get in. Now, you're gonna have that occasional asshole, but it's to be expected. You're in an MMO. Most and a majority of the people are going to be respectful of you saying that at the start of a run. All right, so now let's go over some tanking tips. First of all, you should be familiar with your abilities and skills. Don't just level as a DPS and then switch over to a tank in order to jump into dungeons for the queue times. Know your core abilities and your defensive cooldowns for survivability. Read through them and then practice on them. Practice your rotation on a training dummy, or go out and start soloing some elites. If you want to take it another step further, jump on Wowhead, which will literally list every single one of your abilities, your talents, how to use it, your rotation, literally everything that you need to know about tanking on whatever class you're using. All right, tip number 2. If you're unsure of the dungeons that you're running, then just run those dungeons as a DPS or a healer. Clearing a dungeon in a different role gives you the opportunity to sit back and observe. You'll be able to learn the layout of the map, and you'll also learn the mechanics of each boss. Oh, and don't forget the adventure journal. You can pull up every single dungeon and every single raid, and for each boss encounter, see what the tank is supposed to be responsible for. All right, tip number 3, positioning is crucial. Always tank the boss so that they are facing away from the rest of the party. When I tank, I typically just run straight through the boss. That way he does a complete 180 and faces me. And then the rest of the group doesn't really have to move that much at the start. Try to be aware of the rest of your party and where they're at. You don't want to avoid a mechanic, but turn the boss to face over to some of your main DPS or even worse, your healers. This will get much easier as you learn. Just always know that positioning is going to be constantly changing depending on which mechanics are in play. And there's nothing you can really do if the healers and the DPS have bad positioning. Just primarily worry about yourself. Tip number 4, use tab targeting and keep in mind of your AoE abilities. When dealing with multiple enemies, obviously you want to utilize your AoE abilities in order to hold threat on all of the mobs. However, you do want to tab through targets and not just focus on one. The idea is that you want to spread your threat out pretty evenly across all the mobs because your DPS probably isn't paying attention to you and is just going to focus down one target when they're rotating through their AoE spells, which means there's a good chance that they're going to pull aggro from you. Tip number 5, focus on your healer. When I run dungeons or raids, whoever my healer is, I like to set them as my actual focus. That way I can constantly see their status. How much health do they have? Are they good on mana? Do they have aggro? Are they currently focusing on a DPS because he didn't avoid a mechanic? Making sure that my healer has enough mana for each pull is obviously extremely crucial. If you're unsure, then just ask the healer, hey, what percentage would you like to start resting at? So if I'm aware of my healer, and let's say a DPS needs big heals because he didn't move out of the fire, and I see that my healer now has to focus on that DPS in order to keep them alive, meaning that he's not going to be looking at me for immediate heals. If I'm aware of this, then I'm going to start popping some cooldowns. That way I can reduce the damage that's incoming to the best of my ability. Your healer will also really appreciate this. A good relationship with your healer is very important. Last but not least, practice. You aren't going to get any better until you start jumping in dungeons and putting in the work. We all start from somewhere, and you're going to make mistakes. Just don't let it get the better of you. Keep at it, and all of that hard work will pay off. So that's some of the basics. I hope this answers your questions and some of your concerns. Tanking is a very important role, and it is extremely satisfying once you're comfortable and successful in it. So what are your thoughts on tanking? Are you a beginner? Are you just getting ready to start out? Which class do you prefer? And if you think I missed something, please add it down into the comments below to help others out. And if you have any questions, feel free to leave them down in the comments below and I'll respond to them. Do me a favor and press that like button to help appease the algorithm gods. And if you like WoW or MMO content, then check out my channel and subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.